Hello. So, this week, I just got to say, before I say that, these nose pore strips are working really well. Clean. This week, I'm speaking to a chap who has been a lighthouse through the fog of noise for many people in the music industry. Someone that's, legend is an overused term, but it definitely applies to this gentleman joining me tonight. It's Nick Halkes. Now, Nick Halkes is like, I don't know how to describe this. I don't want to use the words music executive or industry chap, because there's much more than that. He's basically the guy that discovered the Prodigy and helped set up XL Recordings, which is like one of the biggest independent labels on the planet, responsible for like the White Stripes, the Prodigy, obviously. Crikey, who else? I mean, just so many artists. Hey, Lucinda, how are you? Hi, Anu. Hi, Miss Galani. Hi, Siona, how are you? Thank you for joining us, or me, rather. Just waiting for Nick to get online. But yeah, Nick Halkes is a gangster. He's someone that's been supportive of so many artists that I know personally, as well as legendary acts that I'm sure everyone's heard of. And here he is. Let me just get him to join me on this chat, and I can flatter him to his face, as it were. Hi, Anya. Hi, back from London. I hope Berlin's treating you well. Hey, Nick.
Greetings. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. It's getting cold out there, isn't it? I was just outside a minute ago. It's bloody freezing. But apart from that, I'm in decent shape, thank you, mate. Yeah.
Nice.
I've got cider. I decided to get on the go, keeping it West Country.
Nice. And I'm glad we had a little catch up beforehand to discuss not clashing our beverages. Yes. Cheers, sir.
What have you got going down, mate?
The usual bourbon and Coke.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, that's a good drink. I like a bit of that from time to time too.
Yeah, I get a lot of stick for mixing my Cokes because I have to have caffeine and sugar-free Coke mixed with regular Coke because I'm turning into an old man and I can't handle too much caffeine. Of everything that I've experienced in my life, caffeine's the thing that gives me the shakes. It's ridiculous. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I get that. Actually, I'm the same. I generally don't drink coffee. So I'll occasionally have a decaf cappuccino, but otherwise it's like tea or non-caffeinated things generally. And it can really, all of the Red Bull and all of that stuff can really fuck you up if you have too many. A night out slugging Red Bulls is not. It's not great, really, is it?
It's not conducive to a good system, particularly when you're on tour and you're drinking that stuff to stay awake, and then suddenly it hits. It's not great. But yeah, also Warp Spaces is saying, "Yay, caffeine espresso." Hi, Yazzie, how are you? Thank you everyone for tuning in. Hi, Vinny, how are you? But Nick, I was looking back and I was thinking about. Well, first of all, thank you for joining me and helping keep me sane
Pleasure
through these weeks of lockdown. It's lovely seeing a familiar face and sharing a beverage. So thank you. But then I was thinking back to how we first met, and I think that the first time our paths actually crossed in real life was when you started looking after Prush engineers.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And that was like, when Prush formed his kind of live dubstep act, you and Brains came on board as his management, and then our paths crossed a lot. I think we went on tour in India together. With engineers, me with driving Alita.
Yeah.
And then there was the street tour,
which was great fun. I have to say, I've been to India 3 times, and amazingly, 2 of those were on tour with artists. Which I mean, and it's not a country. There's a lot of artists in the UK who I think would love to tour in India and see all the sites and absorb all of that. And I'm lucky enough to have done it twice. Once with Engineers Experiment. And then separately when I was managing Casper. Yeah.
Of course. In fact, that wasn't the same tour that I took Casper on in India. That must have been a secondary one. Because I forgot about that. I
think it was the same one. So, for example, or not.
I don't think.
Maybe not. But I think
no, because I remember coming to your office. I remember coming to your office to sort out his visa for the first one. So it must have been the second one, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's right. An amazing experience. That was for sure.
Totally. And then obviously we were on when Engineers supported the Streets on tour. I remember hanging with you at Brixton Academy in the audience, and you and I were I think we were just chatting so much, and then I remember the audience turning and going, "Can you guys shut up? Because I really want to hear the streets play."
Trying to have a conversation here, yeah.
Yeah, we were like, "Oh, sorry, let's go to the bar," and you were just like, I really, that's the thing I really like about you as well, is that you said, you know what, fair enough, he's paid to see his band, we should piss off and continue our conversation around the back, and and I think that's the golden thread through all this, and the thing I admire about you the most is you've been responsible behind some major acts and some some real moments of cultural change, but you're still the same kind of humble, down-to-earth guy. It's amazing to see, and it's also amazing to see the impact you've had on younger recording artists with your approach to it. And I just wanted to ask you, how do you manage to not let it all run away with you in terms of all the great things you've done and still maintain a certain even keel?
Well, I would say that keeping focused on maybe what comes next is a good thing to do. So rather than spending too much time literally thinking about the history, always having stuff that you still want to achieve helps to keep you in a kind of forward-looking, forward-moving mindset. So I guess I'm constantly kind of scanning for new things to get involved in. Or, like if I do get involved in projects, I'm not the sort of person who's that keen on going, yeah, it's all right, it's a little thing and it's fine, and it just does a little bit of business every now and then, and I'm totally cool with it. I guess I'm a sort of person that if I've bothered to invest some time and energy into something, then I like to see it grow. I like the joy of seeing that thing flourish, and like how can it go? Can it take me into some new experiences geographically, in terms of like people, culturally, whatever. I really enjoy that process of seeing things develop, whether it's an act or a record label, or I've got a couple of other things that I'm involved in now, like I have a podcast, for example, Trailblazers, that I do with Eddie Temple Morris, and that's again, it's something that felt like, oh, this could be a fun, interesting, enjoyable thing to do at the front end, but then my view was like, yeah, but I don't just want it to be purely fun, and I'd actually like to see it develop, and now that's, we're now up to about 20, maybe somewhere between 20 and 25 episodes, and so it feels like that's starting to become a bit of a sort of an archive, really, that hopefully, I know Eddie shares this hope, that hopefully in 5 years time or 10 years time or whatever, if people want to know some of the stories behind electronic music, they'll go, hey, that's a great resource, and it
could be cited for further.
Yeah, maybe by then it'll be, who knows, it might be 40, 50 episodes deep. So there's that, and then the Reach Up thing that I do, that's another good example. It's a kind of disco based night, I guess, that obviously current everything on pause, we all know, but traditionally monthly at the Bussey building, and then touring around. We've done a bunch of international stuff. Ibiza with Carl Cox 3 summers on a row. Portugal, Berlin, and a bunch of festivals. Yeah. And that was another one where started off as like little basement club in Dalston, hiring out a little room or whatever. And then really, myself and I know that Andy Smith, who I started it with, and then Chrissy Kibosh, Chris Sarson, who came on board, and we worked together on it for years. I think we all wanted to see, where can it go? How can it grow?
And of course now, your remix for Kylie as Reach Up has just smashed the charts.
So that's quite interesting. So what I've found over the years is that sometimes you kind of see an interesting door, and you think, I wonder if I can kind of walk through that door, what will happen? And then I sort of somehow go, let's walk through that door, see what happens. And then there's more doors, and then I'm go, oh wow, I'm here. So maybe, God, what happens if I go through this one? And then there's more beyond it. So what you're referring to is, yeah, these kind of Nick Reach Up remixes that are out there, and there's some Nick Reach Up kind of artist stuff, and really that grew out of the gigs. So I was telling you, we were fortunate. We had this good little run of bookings, festivals, and all the rest of it. And then really, because that was happening, I thought, I'd really like to have some music that I can play that that's a bit exclusive, that I'm really excited about. And so then I started, getting involved in making some tunes. And then, I suppose it's just like one thing leads to another. And we did a few, kind of reconnected with Easy Street, a label that I used to work with when I was a uni student here in London many years ago. Reconnected with them, did a couple of mixes on some classic Easy Street tracks, DeLacy Hideaway, and
oh wow,
others. Yeah, and then so doing that, and then some collaborative stuff. Made a track with Birdie and Barbara Tucker, and that got a little bit of daytime Radio 1, and so kind of through one door, opening another door. And then I got offered a remix to remix Mel C, her first single off her album, and that went well, and that led to the Kylie, the offer to remix Kylie. Yeah.
I mean, it's fascinating because you mentioned your uni days, and there's just something that interests me is that obviously you're one of the co-founders of XL, or one of the people that helped make the label so big in in the early days, and then you discovered the Prodigy, right? So you've also you went from things like that to managing friends of mine as well, friends of ours rather, like DJ Fresh, Bad Company, Casper, to name a few. Obviously, Prash Engineers. Like, you've had such an involvement in various different types of music that I guess you're right. The analogy of opening doors is very apt. You know what I mean? Going down certain corridors and finding out other doors to open. But how did it all start? I mean, like, what was your journey to get to that point of, like, to get to the XL position?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a case of how much time have you got, really, Nerm?
Oh, mate, I've got half a bottle here.
Okay. I've got to point out, I'm playing five-a-side tonight, actually.
All right, fine.
I'm not gonna get too smashed, or else I'll be
should we condense
tripping over my bootlaces,
Fair enough. Well, let's condense it.
I'll give you the overview. I mean, really, I say when I talk to uni students and people who are just maybe at an early stage of the journey in music, one thing that I find that I have maybe in common with some of those people is that I didn't really choose music, and I didn't really choose the music industry. I kind of felt that it chose me, and I think people can relate to that, because it's not that you sit there, is it? I mean, you didn't sit there going, what could be a good career path? I need something that's solid, lucrative, stable. I'd like something with some travel options. Yeah, music.
It just happens,
No, you just get into it, and you find yourself hearing a piece of music going, fucking hell, this is incredible. And suddenly you're in, or you go to your first club night, or you go to that magical gig, and you're just like, wow, this is insane. It's so good.
So what was that magical gig for you then?
Well, I would say that there wasn't one pivotal turning point gig, but I went to a run of gigs. I went to see Level 42. Do you remember Level 42?
I do, but the only reference I have now in my head from Level 42 is Alan Partridge, unfortunately. So
yeah. So Level 42 were a kind of, and still exists, like a funk, kind of Brit funk kind of band, jazz funk kind of stuff. And me and my best mate Andy Smith went to see them at Bristol Polytechnic, as it then was, and we were probably 14 at the time. But it was kind of, I'm sure I was the youngest person in the room, but generally kind of students, and then a few non-students, but I think mainly student gig. And in terms of gigs, I suppose we stood right at the front, saw the whole thing, emerged drenched in sweat, and did go, wow, that's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that was probably the first proper gig, which was really enjoyable. And then in terms of sort of more club orientated stuff, my experience, my entry point there was via school disco type stuff, you know, where like there's a mobile disco that comes in and plays.
So I'm guessing the early days of DJing, which was literally, you know, sort of that top 40 kind of 7 inches going in, bringing your lights and your turntables and stuff. And
absolutely that. Absolutely. I'm pleased to see a bit of support for Level 42 from Imran. That's good, man. I'm good. I don't want Level 42 to be consigned totally to the Alan Partridge.
I apologise. It's just the only form of reference I've got, I'm afraid.
Currently residing in the Alan Partridge file.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No. It's all good. It's all good. So that's right. So school disco, crazy psychedelic shack DJing, you know, sort of traffic light, you know, mobile disco thing. And me and my best mate, Andy Smith, watching them. They had a telephone thing. So, you know, like an old trim phone handset, you know, coily like telephone thing. And they had that, and they were using it as a headphone, right, to queue up records. But Andy and I didn't know what queuing up records was at that point. You know, the thing where you like wind it back and find the start of a piece of vinyl. So they're on the phone, and I'm saying to Andy, who's actually locked in right now, and I'm saying, what did he do? He's on the phone. There's a dance floor full of people. I don't know, what is it? And we're having this conversation, and we came up with this theory. Maybe he is speaking, the guy from Psychedelic Shack, maybe he's speaking to his mate in the van outside on some kind of walkie-talkie type thing, saying like, yeah, there's a load of, you know, mods in tonight, bring in some more bring some more jam 7 inches in from the van. We didn't know what it was, but then we spoke to the guys. They explained, no, we're trying to find the start of a record, and then you queue it up and start it.
Yeah.
And then you know, that was, we got rolling, and they invited us to sort of queue up a few records, and
awesome.
From there it led to clubs, and me and Andy had a mobile disco thing that we did with a hi-fi from his house, hi-fi from mine. Then we just rolling.
And that explains Andy's massive collection of 7-inch 45s.
Well, yeah, we started, I think, at pretty much the same time. But Andy dug in more to, you know, the vinyl collection side of it than I did. But the Shack said their advice was guys, you know, keep buying the cheap sevens, you know, build up. That's how you build up a record collection. Like, go to the, you know, just find the bargain bin, you know, 7-inch singles, and it'll serve you well. Yeah. And Andy, more than I, you know, has followed that philosophy across the decades, you know. And
that served him well as not only a DJ for Reach Up, but also as Portishead's DJ, which kind of worked out quite well. Having such a deep collection to draw from.
That's where we grew up. We grew up in the town of Portishead. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that at all. I can barely tell that you're West Country until it's only after you mentioned the cider thing. I was like, aha, yeah, there's a connection.
So Andy Smith, myself, and Jeff Barrow all went to Gordano Comprehensive School, which is it's on the outskirts of, you know, it's like maybe 12 miles outside Bristol or whatever. Jeff was a couple of years younger than us. But I think me and Andy were the people. Hey, Tim, how you doing? That's my friend Tim from Berlin's just joined us. How's it going, man?
Lovely.
Yes, that's right. So Andy and I were probably like the kids who were most keen on music in our year. And then I think Jeff was probably maybe the most music-focused kid in his year. And so the way that Andy ended up touring with Portishead was that they discovered that they had, you know, the music thing in common. I think they met in the local youth club. Pretty sure that was what happened. And then Andy started, you know, kind of serving up beat ideas, sample ideas to Jeff, and then when things started to flourish, Jeff was like, hey, you know, Andy, you've been there, you know, from early doors, and the vibe was always, hey, if we make it big, would you know, Andy, maybe you can come and DJ with us and all the rest of it, which Andy did then, and he disappeared off and did, you know, played everywhere all over the planet as Portishead exploded.
Yeah, and then I mean, so then from that point onwards, then I guess rave culture happened to you because then the bouncer came out, right? Or was XL first and then the bouncer, or was it?
Indeed, it was XL first and then the bouncer. So basically, that would be pre-Portishead exploding.
Yeah.
So rave culture, yeah. I mean, I was lucky enough to be, you know, timing's a very important thing, and you don't, you know, sometimes you can't control it. I always say to people, you don't make your own luck, because you can't make luck. All you can do is put yourself in environments which increase the chances of good fortune and luck happening. So you can kind of tilt the balance in your favor by trying to be in the right sort of places at the right time. But you can't make it happen. But, you know, but when I I moved up to London to go to uni, and then being at university, and then graduating, and kind of left uni in the summer of '88. Yes. So what a wonderful time to sort of enter into the job market, having been, you know, an obsessive dance, electronic music culture fan all of that time, you know, at school into sixth form, and then, you know, whilst I was at uni. So when I was at uni, Nerm, I was doing stuff like promoting gigs and DJing, and I helped out on Radio 1. I worked, I did a summer in America where I had a Work America visa, and I blagged my way into WBLS, New York's leading black music station, and ended up like the intern there, filing the records, answering the phones. Which again, it's that through one door and in, you know, and then another one opens.
It's fascinating. Like everyone that I've sort of had the benefit of working with that happens to be younger than me or works with me. The one thing that I try and impress, and you've mentioned it, is the power of the blag. Like just the sheer will to get yourself in through the door and get on that list, even if you haven't got a penny in the world, that you would be at that gig somehow, and you'll figure out a way of blagging it in. And I think that's so critical of just trying to blag your way in anywhere, that you kind of feel, or I do now, is that if someone's trying to blag it at one of my gigs, I'm like, there's a certain amount of empathy that I have, and I'm like, you know what, that's wicked, come on bro, you know, or sister, come in, you know, which is wicked. No,
I would agree with that. I like to see people who show that what's the word for
initiative?
Initiative is a great word for it. People who show that initiative, that spirit to move things forward. I mean, a good example. I just remember me and my couple of my mates were so keen to go to a club called Delirium at the Astoria, which was like the hottest club in London at one point, and it was like quite a dressy crowd. So you needed to look hip.
Sorry, the Astoria, the Astoria.
The Astoria Theatre, which is now no longer there, but it's on Tottenham Court Road.
The one on the corner.
Yes.
Where all the punk gigs were, which is why when you said dressy, I was a little confused. I was like, okay, it must have been before that.
When I mean dressy, I mean you needed to look hip, not smart, as collar and tie dressy. You just needed, like when Delirium was on, was like fashion clubbing vibe. So people who just looked cool, really. You know, it was full of people who looked like they'd come off the pages of ID magazine.
Got you. Not like all shirted up and like suited up. That. It was very much like stylish, essentially.
Yeah. But there's an example of not taking no for an answer. Me and my buddies queued up. It was about 25 minutes queuing up to get into Delirium. Completely arbitrary door policy. You know, the guy was like, no, yes, no, yes, like this. We queued up. He was like, no, turned us all away. And we were like, went to the back of the queue again, queued up for another 20 minutes, got to the front again. He was like, yeah. So it just proved how completely arbitrary the whole thing was. But it showed that, you know what, sometimes you got to have a couple of goes if you want to achieve something. Or you got to try some different angles. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. the blagging thing is important and it's valid, and you know, initiative. People need to show initiative.
Yeah, and that you like you said, you're not going to say no for an answer, but also that you're going to keep trying, and inevitably, I beg your pardon. I think that for me, it was just like a general kind of like sympathy that works for me. It's like, I'll just shut up and get it. In fact, oh my God, I was going to mention this. Is that there's been 2 times there's been some guest list snafu, and I've been outside, and then you've showed up like some sort of a fairy godfather. And
really?
It was, twice. So it was like with Bad Company and their reformation at Fabric. And I just got back from India that weekend, in fact, and I got there. Right. And I should have been on the list, because I think that either Darren or Dan would put me on the list, or someone had put me on the list. And then you just happened to walk past. It was like, Nick! And you're like, yeah, cool. And then also there was Casper and Skrillex at Fabric as well.
Right.
And they'd just done that. And so that's twice I remember you just popping up and being like, oh, you're meant to be indoors. Come on then.
Yes, well, it does happen, and I guess it's the sort of the way the universe works. I suppose, like, over the years, somebody's helped me to get in, whatever, and then you see somebody you want to help them, and there's a bit of a sort of karmic ecosystem to all of this. And if you are, you know, now you can't always get people into places, so sometimes it's just not possible. But if you can help, then, you know, it's nice to try and help if you can, because you know that, you know, the shoe's been on the other foot in previous times. And it might be that, you know, it might be me, myself, equally in a, who knows, in a year's time, I could be turning up somewhere, and I can imagine, I wouldn't be surprised if you were, and you were inside and you'd help. Well, oh, hold on, Nick, let me try and get hold of whoever, because now, I mean, you know, these skills used to be very important. They're skills that we've sort of not really had much requirement for over recent months, unfortunately. No. But
I tell you what I do to try and blag into a club now.
Even in the online world, though, there are ways of getting yourself into interesting environments. You know, there's interesting stuff, you know, interesting places.
Absolutely. I mean, speaking about all of that and connecting those dots and helping people out, like, fast forward to you at XL Records, you just had the Bouncer come out, which was a rave anthem. Like, I mean, for people watching, it's like that sample, which is your name's not down, you're not coming in. Yeah. And then it's just, you know, in fact, I'll play it because it's such a tune. It's like a big, big tune. And then you ended up on Top of the Pops, which has got to be crazy. Like, to end up on, like, national television, and Top of the Pops was a big music show where they had the top 10 rundown and everyone would play it. That must have been something.
The funny thing is that I'd already been on there once.
No way.
The Bouncer, strangely enough. So as you alluded to, really the story of the Bouncer is that at you know, XL, we were signing these great records, and you know, Prodigy and SL2 and Liquid, all this sort of stuff was sort of flying around. And then really, in terms of the Bouncer, you know, without repeating myself too often, sometimes you don't know what's behind the door unless you walk through it or give it a little push and see. Yeah. And in the case of the Bouncer, it was myself and Richard Russell said, shall we make a record? You know, shall we have a go at making a record? Because we're in this scene, and there's hits happening around us, and I'd signed Prodigy, and you know, it was all going off. But neither of us knew if we made a record whether it would be any good. So it was like, well, let's make something, and that's the way to find out. So we made the Bouncer, not actually with sort of Top of the Pops in mind and like big hit in mind. Really, it was about kind of making a record that had underground support, rock solid specialist support, but we wanted it to be memorable. So we wanted it to be a big record in the raves. And we knew that one of the ways that you get a big record in the raves is if people can remember it, and they can go into a record store, a physical record store, and go, have you got that record that goes? And then if the guy behind the counter or the girl behind the counter can go, yeah, this is what you need, bam, you've sold a record. Now, if you made an instrumental rave record and you're going, oh, it's this one, it's got some piano, and I can't really sing it, it's a sort of like, da-da-da. Well, it'll be like, I've got hundreds of rave records with a piano.
Unless you've got a really good hook and then
Yeah.
you can sing the hook. But yeah, so I guess the sample was going back to your blagging experience. Like if your name's not down, you're not coming in.
Yeah.
Was that it? Was that the sort of logic behind it?
Yeah, well, we felt that kind of experience was something that people can relate to, because a lot of people have turned up trying to get into a party or an event, and you know, and they know what it's like to experience being turned away.
Yeah.
We'd experienced it. I knew what it was like to turn up somewhere and like, nah, you know.
Not tonight, mate. Go on.
Yeah,
do
exactly.
One. Yeah.
So we knew that. So we knew that as well as it being a memorable hook, it had a bit of more kind of cultural resonance to it than just being. It wasn't just a hook like dance, you know, when the beat goes boom. It wasn't that. It was something that had a bit more. Well, it was a conversation starter, wasn't it? Really, because we, you know, now we're talking about it, and whenever a TV show comes on that has, you know, about nightclub culture, and it quite often will get a spin and people will talk about it. It's come to sort of define a certain part of the clubbing sort of process. So yeah, so we knew that. So we wanted a rock solid rave record, memorable, landed on this hook, made the record, and then interestingly didn't sign it to XL. So this record didn't come out. It sounds like it could have been an XL record, but in actual fact, we signed it to Tribal Bass, which is Rebel MC's record label, which was a label kind of run by Simon Goff, who I used to work for. And so the record came through that route. And another reason for that is there was a bit of a concern, if we start making records and signing them ourselves, is that going to be a bit problematic, you know? And it potentially was, actually, because my very good friend Ian Bland, who I work closely with to this day, he makes the Dream Frequency, made the Dream Frequency record, big Northern Rave act. And as it happened, we sort of had the Bouncer and Dream Frequency both came out on the same day, but they were sort of jostling. They were likely to come around the same time. Now, if those records had both been on the same label, and our record had gone in at 27 and his record had gone at 28, and we got Top of the Pops or something, it would be uncomfortable. I mean, it would have been uncomfortable anyway, if that had happened. But
it's like a proper conflict of interest, basically.
It could have been a bit uncomfortable, but
yeah.
In this particular case, the record came out through a different label. We went in at number 7. Ian went in at 20 something, and funnily enough, we both did Top of the Pops on the same day. So that was very memorable. So I was there both in as an artist, and then when we'd done our kind of artist run through, then I'd go and to see Dream Frequency do theirs, and I'd become artist hat off, A&R man hat on, and then I'd be saying to them, guys, maybe you need to be a bit further back. Can we get the keyboards over? You know. Yeah. So that was a very memorable thing to have to be in an act, and then also to kind of be the A&R guy for an act that were both on Top of the Pops on the same episode.
That's awesome.
It was quite an unusual and memorable thing. I think.
That's proper multi-task. You know what? That's the thing. I think the gift about being involved in the music sort of world at large is the opportunity to do loads of different stuff. Yeah. Sometimes simultaneously, like on the same night. I remember actually having this conversation with you at XOYO. When I think I'd booked like engineers to play, obviously, and then Adam F as well. And I was running it and hosting and doing a bunch of stuff at the same time. And I remember just having a bit of a chat with you, and you had like words of advice for me, which was really sweet. And it was amazing multitasking advice. It was wicked.
I'm going to answer Yaz's question, where Yaz says, how do you have, hold on a minute, let me just check it.
Oh yeah, how does one have time to multitask like that?
Yes. I think that basically something has to give is the answer to that. So if you're multitasking and you are developing, let's say, if you're doing a couple of things at the same time, like at the moment I'm managing artists and I'm also, remixing and producing records, whatever. There's only so much time in the day. So I think the thing I'm going to say to Yaz is yes, something needs to give somewhere. So, for example, one of the things that I've not done much of is I'm not the Netflix guy. So if you have a conversation, Nick, have you seen Ozark? Nope. You know, sort of.
Yeah.
Have you seen all the episodes of The Crown? No, I'm still literally on the first season. You know, how many episodes of Breaking Bad have you seen, Nick? And I'll say 1 or 2 at most. You know, so that's just an example of like those hours that a lot of people spend in that space. You know, which is great, and there's nothing wrong with it. But probably most of those hours that I could spend doing that, I probably spend working at something. So there's only so many hours. So something somewhere needs to give.
But I think it helps that, you know, when you say hours working, I think we're all very, very, very fucking blessed to have stuff that's really enjoyable and fun to do as well.
Yeah,
and that's critical, like enjoying what you do, and then sort of going back to the whole narrative. You set up XL. And then you happen to sign this random unknown act called the Prodigy. Now, how did that happen? How did Liam Howlett get this cassette to you?
Yeah, it just called me up actually. So one thing about running
I just want to say who you're still managing to this day, which is obviously a long relationship. So
yeah,
that first cassette thing, you know.
Sure. So really, you know, putting out really good records is probably the best way of attracting great artists to a record label. So if you're the record label that signed David Bowie, there's a decent chance that you know that another artist wants to be on the same label as Bowie, or if you're the label that the Beatles were on, then maybe that feels good. If you're in the Pet Shop Boys and you can sign to the same label that signed the Beatles, and you're in Pet Shop Boys or Blur, do you want to be on Parphone? The label that putting out the fucking Beatles. What those? You know, it's like, that feels.
So what track was it that got Liam excited about XL? What were the artists that you had that got Liam excited about the label?
Yes, it's a good question. So probably, I think a lot of it would have been the Frankie Bones related material.
Right.
So we were putting out Musto and Bones stuff, and Just As Long As I Got You from the Looney Tunes EP series, Frankie Bones and Lenny D. And Frankie was a big DJ, and his Bones Breaks records were massive. And I think that, and a few other bits and pieces, kind of, you know, made Liam think, oh, this is a cool label. They do some good stuff.
Yeah.
And then I think he approached a label called Tam Tam, and he was a DJ at the time with an act called Cut to Kill. And then
who was?
Liam
Liam, okay, right.
Yeah, was basically DJing with a rap act.
Right.
And then he knew that music wasn't really right to be part of that. So it was he I think sent the music or went to play the music to the label that Cut to Kill was signed to, and then called me up and said, I've got some music, you know, blah blah blah, this is my story, can I come and play it to you? And really some decisions are very fortuitous, and life could be very different if the coin had just gone tails rather than heads. Fortunately, I said, yeah, sure, come in and play it to me. I could have said, oh, maybe, you know, send it in the post, mate. But I said, no, come on in. And he came in, played me some music. And I wasn't hearing hits. I was hearing good, underground, exciting, dynamic music.
But also, Liam's from Essex, and you guys were based in West London, right? So you had to get all the way across London to come and see you, right? Which is kind of a mission as well. Like, I don't know. Yeah, like you guys were Notting Hill sides, and he was like
we were in Wandsworth at the time. Actually.
Oh, so you were south. Okay, so you were west.
We were in Wandsworth. Still a bit of a schlep, yes. Yeah. But you know the score. You know, if you've got a vibe and
you like, want to get
if you're a producer and you've got a chance to get, you know, maybe meet the people and get on a record label that you quite like the look of, you're gonna get on a train from Manchester or whatever, aren't you? You know.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So, yeah, he came in and played me some stuff.
It was What Evil Lurks, right? The 4 tracks that came out. Or was there anything else on that cassette that no one's heard, or was it just those 4 tunes?
It was generally that. It was generally that stuff that was around. Yeah, you know, it sounded like good quality, innovative, exciting, dynamic underground music, and that ticked the boxes. So I was happy to go for it. You know, if I was just thinking, are there hits here? Then
it wouldn't have happened.
Probably would have been a pass.
Yeah.
But I wasn't thinking, are there hits? And also, fortunately, I wasn't thinking, is there an act? Because there wasn't an act at that point. It really was just Liam. Although in that meeting, funnily enough, I did ask him, how do you plan to grow it? And he said, oh, I've got a couple of mates, and you know, and we kind of all think it might be a cool thing to be in a band, but haven't had any rehearsal, so hopefully that'll work out okay. Which it amazingly did, of course.
Yeah.
But you know, sometimes you've just got to back talent and something that you think is really good, and then you see what happens from there. But no major label would have signed the Prodigy
at that time
if they'd had that meeting. No, it just would, because it wasn't radio, there wasn't a live thing, and so the list goes on.
Yeah, Imran's asking, was that above the Beggars shop? But I thought Beggars Banquet were based in West London as well.
It wasn't near the shop, no.
Right.
It was in Alma Road, in Wandsworth, an office building.
Wow.
So yeah, so there you go, and then, you know, then it moves to the next. Yeah, it just moves, you know, and we put out the first EP, and it did okay, but it wasn't wasn't a really big record.
I mean, that's the thing I wanted to ask you, is because What Evil Looks, as the first Prodigy release with XL, is something of a lost gem that resurfaced amongst record collectors on the re-release and all those kinds of things that happened.
Yeah.
But really, the Prodigy experience was the one that just kicked the doors down, and it sort of went from that, you know, there was. I don't know why I'm telling. Let me mansplain rave culture to you. Sorry about this, Nick. But like,
we'll
you know,
call it
obviously,
Nerm-splaining.
Yeah, Nerm-splaining it. Let me explain to you about rave culture. Crikey. But obviously, like, you know, the Prodigy experience like merged different worlds together. You know, before it went on to you know, Music for a Jilted, when it got more rockier and stuff and all those, it really sort of galvanized a lot of underground sounds together.
Yeah, sure.
And it must have, and the reason why I ask you this is probably for my own benefit too, because I'm intrigued. Because then, you know, you rejoined the Prodigy when they were cooking vinyl,
essentially. So I rejoined when around that point that they split from XL. Yeah, because I by then had gone on to set up Positiva. So I was running Positiva, and then after Positiva, I then had set up my own business, Incentive, and then we reconnected.
So there's some overlap there. So we'll come back to that point, because I was just thinking that the thing in my head that connects the Prodigy experience and when you came back on board was Invaders Must Die, and it was that sort of golden thread of rave music, essentially. Because I was at the Gatecrasher gig when they did the stuff that became Invaders Must Die. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, this feels like it did in the first time I ever heard them. Oh my God, this is amazing. And was that, you know, something that you closely felt an affinity to when that all happened?
Oh, absolutely. Or... Yeah. You know, I mean, there were some people who felt that the Prodigy's ability to have really big records, you know, had been and gone. And that whilst there'd be an ongoing live proposition, that maybe they wouldn't sell that many records or whatever into the future, which I fundamentally disagreed with. I really thought that with the right record, there's such a love for this band, such a feeling of positivity for them, that what the Prodigy needed was the right record. And if they made the right record, I believe that it would do very well. And it was the right record, and it did do very well. So it was, you know, when people were like, "Oh my God, I bet you never saw this happen, this success like this," and I'm like,
"No, you knew all along."
Basically, why not? If you make a great record and you're a great band, why can't you have great success?
And you know what? It's interesting that you said that as well, because I think that the term band was redefined by the Prodigy in terms of what constitutes a band, and then again reinvented on this album. You know, when in terms of Invaders Must Die, coming back, it really was like it had so much impact. I was just like, you can't really fuck with it.
Amazing record, right?
Yeah, totally.
And that's what we're all looking to. Yeah, well, I can't speak for everybody. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to be involved with artists that are talented artists making great records, putting music out where somebody somewhere goes, fucking hell, that is, oh man, that's incredible. I need to hear that from the start again, and then get to the end of the record and then, you know, ideally you want that person to go, wow, I've heard that 3 times in a row, and now I want to play it the 4th time. And that's what I'm like. If an artist I'm working with sends me something, and I'm just like, oof, bam, bam, you know, and I'm playing it 5, 6, 7 times in a row, I'm like, there's got to be a decent chance that some other people will feel like that as well. And that's really what it's. You know, there is no hard and fast rule to all of this. As we know, it's subjective. I might think a piece of music is brilliant, and you might go not feeling it, or vice versa. You know, it's not that you're wrong and I'm right, or vice versa. Sometimes just different people vibe off different things.
You know, it's fascinating you say that, because I just had a flashback of being like when Decode and I were on Radio 1 when this album came out. I remember the sampler for Invaders Must Die came across, and I remember calling up Wolfie, who was plugging it at that point. And I was like, bruv, this tune with Dave Grohl on drums, Run with the Wolves, is like runs at 160. So it's kind of at that drum and bassy tempo that D and I could fuck with on air. And I was like, Wolfie, can we play this? Because it's basically like a Radio 1 exclusive for a certain show. So he made some calls and came back and said, great. And then I remember this distinctly was that, was it Warriors Dance?
Yeah.
I think it was Warriors Dance that Vernon Kay loved. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, he was relentlessly playing it. And I was just like, this is
good, man.
I've never seen a record do this. Like cover the whole building at Radio 1 where ultra specialists like me and D would jump on one tune and then fucking Vernon Kay would talk about another. It was like, hey?
Yeah.
How the fuck does that happen?
Really hit the moment there. And of course, culturally, what was going on in around, you know, 2009, you know, 2010, that kind of era was, of course, these waves of hard-edged electronic music, and in particular there's a wave of 140 BPM dirty, filthy, hard-edged electronic music, same tempo basically as rave, a lot of rave, and that was dubstep. So the context for when this record dropped, you know, the biggest club records weren't cool house records. The things that were exciting the clubs were Scream's remix of In for the Kill, or you got it, or Casper, or, you know, Where's My Money, whatever. These records were big, and so you know, again, timing, the right kind of sort of context, and what was in the air was this, and of course, there was also those hard-edged records like by Fake Blood and some Justice stuff and whatever that was doing. There was that whole fidget house thing as well, kind of post that. You know, and so sometimes it all just comes together, and really in the case of Invaders Must Die, great record, great band, you know, it's the right time, and that was why it went on to do whatever 1.4 million albums or whatever it was.
Can I ask you a question before I go back to your story in terms of labels? Is how do you know when it's not the right time for an artist you're looking after? Because like finding the right time seems like a magic art.
One of the things is that the market kind of tells you. So sometimes you're working with an artist, you go, yeah, great record, and you might put it out, and you're like, God, we're really pushing this uphill. Can we get a spin on this station? No. Have we got press coverage? People are shrugging their shoulders, and then you just sometimes think maybe we've got great music, but maybe it's the wrong time, and that's why we're not getting the support or the pickup.
Yeah.
So the market can tell you that the time is not right, and then, you know, you're sometimes instinctively you just feel that it doesn't. You look, I mean, there's a lot in music. Often, a piece of music, sometimes its strengths are also its weaknesses.
Yeah.
So if we move as an example of this, right, a good example, and it kind of moves the arc forward through time. So reel to reel, I like to move it. That record, you know, it wasn't a house record, it wasn't a reggae record, it wasn't a rave record. It didn't fit solidly into any of the particular genre pockets that were dominant at the time. Now, and also it wasn't a natural radio record with a gruff ragga voice, patois, you know, patois ragga gruffness thing. That wasn't the sound of vocals that generally easily flew onto Radio 1 at that point. So it didn't sound like a radio record, and it didn't sound like a big, you know, record in any of the big genres at the time. Now, often that scenario will mean that a record just falls away, and people go, "Good record, but didn't really fit in. Couldn't really get going. Get
I don't know what to do with this.
Don't know what to do with this." But but those qualities, not really fitting in, different, were also the strengths of I Like to Move It by Reel to Reel. And then once it did get going, then it really got going. And obviously it got embraced by all the different kind of underground scenes, and it became a very big pop record as well. And it got radio, and it went on to be a big smash. But because the set of circumstances was as I described, nobody else wanted to sign that. Nobody else offered on it other than Positiva. We were the only label that said we want to sign it from Strictly Rhythm in America. And everybody else was going, doesn't fit in.
Was that quite a transition for you, going from XL, which is essentially like a powerhouse indie label at that time, to then, beg your pardon, going to Positiva, which I believe was backed by EMI at that point? So did you have to play nicely with the major label system, or were you given carte blanche and independence that you would have done anyway?
Yeah, so I think creatively it was carte blanche.
Carte blanche, whatever
we call it.
Yeah.
So the good news was that they didn't want a rave label or a house label. They just really wanted me to come in and sign some stuff that I was enthusiastic about.
Right.
And they wanted to have some hits. They didn't want hits though. They didn't want cool underground records.
They trusted your tastes, essentially.
Yes. For a period of time. Now if we'd got 2 years into the thing, or 3 years, no hits, I don't think they'd be necessarily saying, "Oh, it's great to have you around, Nick. We love your taste. Let's keep backing your taste for another 4 or 5 years."
Yeah.
No, they wanted a return as well.
Yeah.
But then, you know, there was a degree of navigation necessary. You know, sort of legal stuff and contractual things, and the way that EMI worked. It was a bit like a super tanker. If you wanted to go 20 degrees to the right, you had to keep spinning the wheel, and you couldn't just go there like that. It might take a minute to sort of shift the trajectory of the vessel.
And was that difficult for you to adapt to, considering you'd come from like essentially an independent background, but also you were able to act as an independent node, as it were, not have to? Because I know for me, navigate, like doing a similar thing and working for myself, and then having to fit in with a bigger infrastructure like the BBC, particularly when I was younger, was a really it was a bit of a culture shock. Just like that, like those long turning arcs where you have to kind of plan things a little big. Like, was that a difficult thing for you to navigate, or did you figure it out?
You know, definitely it had some challenges, but I kind of expected there to be challenges as well. And you know, and sometimes I needed to say to senior people at EMI things like, if you want to have success with what I'm doing, you do need to support me and let me do it this way, because that's the way that we'll have success. And if we do it the old way, the EMI way, the way that EMI's always done it for the last 25 years, you probably won't have the hits. So it's kind of up to you. And then, you know, so that applies to things like whether I was signing records for or artists for life of contract, or whether I was doing a 10-year or 5-year license deal in from a hot record from Germany or Belgium or Italy or whatever. And I would say, hey, if we're going to sign this record, to sign it, it needs to be a 10-year license and this and that and the other, and let's do it. And I think we'll have a hit. And if you say, no, it has to be 30 years, we probably won't sign it and somebody else will have the hit.
That's the point, I guess. If you can point to competitors and say, well, look, they're doing it, and
that was why it's why I was brought in, because I'd had a big wave of hits at XL, and I was able to say, well, these are the things that are necessary to have hits at the moment. Unfortunately, they wanted to have hits, so they were supportive, and some of the executives there were really good in that they really tried to be really flexible to find ways of accommodating. So, for example, BBE, 7 Days and 1 Week, big smash record, they wouldn't license the vinyl rights to us. So they were like, yes, you can have it, and put it out as a CD single, and on this pre-digital, you can have it as a CD single and sell cassettes, that's all fine, but we need to retain the vinyl rights. Yeah. Now, normally that would be a complete deal breaker, because it was very important to sell a lot of pieces of vinyl in those days. And we wanted thousands of Positiva range bag 12 inches all over HMV and Virgin, whatever. Yeah. So in that case, what we needed to find a workaround. And in the case of BBE, we said to them, okay, you won't give us vinyl rights, but what about if we buy 10 or 15,000 12-inch singles off you, but we want them to be in like Positive.
And we relabel them.
Yeah, almost. And they said, yeah, that's fine. So that was our way of accommodating that problem. And
so it's almost like a co-label.
A lawyer called James Radici, who worked hard with us to sort that out.
I mean, that's the thing. I think thinking of creative solutions to stuff is I guess a major part of this job, isn't it? It's trying to figure out what the barriers are and then how to get over them. By the way, Nick, what are those records behind you? There's a Positiva one to your
we got a couple of Prodigy ones at the top, and then we've got
I can only see the bottom two.
Yeah, that's the Buckethead's The Bomb.
Oh my God, Buckethead was you.
Yeah, and then that's DJ Quicksilver Bellissima, and then there's some Prodigy ones further up the wall.
Amazing. That's
video
so cool.
Directed by Guy Ritchie, actually.
No way.
Yeah. Yes.
By who? By which one? Sorry, I didn't hear the last bit. Which video?
So Buckethead's The Bomb.
No way.
Yeah. So video directed by Guy Ritchie.
No way.
Yeah.
No way. That's so cool.
Yeah. He was starting out.
It's
before everything. Before
it's incredible how. I mean, it's incredible how many hooks that you're behind or have been sort of partly responsible for.
Well, a lot of these, I mean, having an involvement. I mean, this record existed. It was coming in on import. So, really, in the case of this one, it was thanks to Kevin Robinson, who worked for me at the time, that the penny dropped really on the Bucketheads record. But yeah, so he was just like, I just think it's one that we should sign, and eventually I was like, yeah, let's sign it.
That's amazing.
But I can't take credit for, because even in Reel to Reel, I like to move it. On that one, Dave Lambert was the guy saying, "Hey, it's a good one, Nick," and I was like, not totally sure. But you make a judgment call, don't you? And you go, yes, this is one to go for, or no, it isn't, and there'll be other records that we didn't sign or whatever.
That's interesting, because I think that you've hit on two things, as far as I can see anyway. Number one is like when to delegate and trust the people you delegate to. And number two is how to deal with pre-existing infrastructures that could potentially drive you mad. And you just kind of, I mean, how do you deal with both frustrations? Like, in two ways, like trusting the people that you work with one way, and also then giving yourself enough space to not get angry with the people above you.
Well, in terms of trusting people, I mean, I'm a very big fan of working with people, and ideally surrounding myself with people who have skills that I don't have. I don't want to be I don't have a desire to be the best at area A and area B and area C and area D. I'm cool if somebody's like an absolute specialist in area D. That's great. I'm happy to work with them. Be the king or the queen of that area. But then let's work together that I can help sort of whatever talents you have, that I can maybe help sort of help those talents to grow and to have some sort of bigger, greater success. So working with people is important. Finding people that you like, that are talented, if you can surround yourself with good people in various different areas of your life, then you know, hopefully
that's a good way to go.
Hopefully that will sort of work out reasonably well in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I mean, you must get a lot of people asking for your advice and like sort of saying, Nick, will you manage me? And how do you cope with that? Because you must get, like I said, a lot of people doing that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I try to, if somebody just says, can you give me a little bit of advice? And it's just sort of have a listen to a record and a little bit of not quite, not really feeling it, whatever. I'm fine to try and do that, but there's only so many hours in the day. I think I guess one of the things that I've kind of put into place since lockdown started is a model though where I can work with some developing artists but not manage them. So taking on a management role for an artist is a big commitment. So there's usually a contract and you're in there for a period of time. And it can be all encompassing, and you can be speaking to them very regularly. And I've got this problem and that, and there's emails and calls coming in, and 24 hours a day, and it's a big thing. But I've basically started doing some mentoring now, slash consultancy, if you like, where I am working with developing artists and saying, hey, yeah, I'll make an hour available. Send me your music. I'll have a look, listen, try and figure it out, and then let's do an hour session. And I'm not going to be your manager, so I'm not going to be there to answer the call at 2 a.m. if some problems happened in bloody Berlin and whatever, you know. That's not me. It's just like, let's do an hour session. And I'll say, have you thought about this cover version, or why don't you collaborate with this person, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a kind of business model that I'm working on much more now. And if people are interested in that, if they're a developing artist or a music-based entity, they could hit me up direct on that, or go via One for the Nerds, which is a platform that kind of has producer kind of advice, and I also am accessible via that. So that's a way of working with people and giving advice.
Without that long commitment,
but without the big commitment. And funnily enough, while we're on that, that's where on that topic, there's an opportunity to sort of bid for a session of advice with an organisation called Arms Around the Child. Which is one where whoever the bids, get the most amount, what have you, that money all goes to charity, and that entity takes care of vulnerable children around the world. Cool.
So it's like an auction for your ears.
Nice little thing to be doing, because in that one, the money goes to charity, and then I give an hour of my time or whatever, and hopefully that can be beneficial. So basically, if you look at my Insta, Nick Halkes, or any of my socials, Facebook, whatever, you'll see a little bit of information about that. So that was something I wanted to give a plug to today.
Oh, wicked. Nice. Arms around the children. That's wicked. Well, actually, Imran's got an interesting question, which I also kind of want to echo, which is, obviously, and obviously it's maybe a bit too in-depth for this chat, considering the amount of whiskey I've had. But the whole idea of live music having stopped and streaming being the sort of primary access point for music, and obviously there's a lot of conversations about revenue going to the creators from streaming in this current situation. And there's been this whole there was a news article today where Nadine Shah and Soweto Kid, who I went to school with, big up Nadine, big up Soweto, we're talking about how streaming should be treated like radio plays as opposed to sales, and compensating the writers. Like, what are your views on all of that?
Yeah, I mean, clearly it's very difficult for lots of artists to live off streaming revenue. That's a fact, and it's been obviously brought into great focus by the big pause on live. So I would say that it is a very necessary conversation. And maybe without the pause on live is something that's allowed it to have greater focus. And yes, I would like to see artists and songwriters reimbursed at a greater level for their endeavours. There's a lot of power in very few hands, and there's a very real fear that it's very difficult for new artists to really establish themselves in a big way when we have in light of the way that the ecosystem works at the moment. It's tough. It's really tough. So yes, I'm supportive of a fair return for songwriters and creators.
I think it's fascinating, actually, because the positive out of all this means that it is being addressed and discussed. And it was potentially, I guess, pre-COVID, a conversation that would have just gone under the radar. But now, maybe because it's adding to that conversation. Yeah. Which is quite fascinating. But cool, bro. Look, I'm going to let you. We discussed like sort of 45 minutes, and we've gone way over that. So sorry for keeping you.
I've lost count. What is the time?
Well, that's a good sign. It's 7 minutes past 7.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I thought I lost count. But it's been fun.
Thank you so much.
Good to chat to you, man. Hope it's been good.
You too. And thank you. I know I said I'd keep this short, but again, I think we've run over. So thank you for bearing with me and my nonsense.
No, it's all good. And and I was just maybe in wrapping, wanted to say, just I'm on Insta, obviously, and Facebook and what have you. And if people do, you never know when there might be a sort of life-changing or game-changing opportunity. You never know who's listening, and it's possible that the next big, enormous global talent might be sitting in Mumbai or whatever, just watching this, thinking, "God, I'm making some music in my bedroom," and you never know. So there is an invitation that if people are creating music and they think that it is something where I might be able to have an angle on kind of expanding their reach or whatever, they can hit me up. Awesome. And then obviously we also talked about the consultancy thing. So that's also another thing that people could reach out to me if they thought that was appropriate. But otherwise, I'm just going to keep cracking on, keep pushing forward with all of the stuff that we've talked about, Nerm, the management and the reach up stuff, get a few more podcasts done with a bit of luck, and just keep cracking on, man.
Nice one. Man. Well, thank you for today, and big love and good luck on your match later.
All right, mate. Thank you. I'm off to literally better head to the 5-a-side pitch now. See you later, man.
See you later. Bye.